welcome back to this episode of The Latest Thread. And we're sorry Ava can't be with us this week, but she'll be back next time. And we're actually going to discuss our favorite quilts that we've made. And then we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back and talk about our least favorite quilts. So that should be real fun. So I think the least favorite might be more interesting than the favorites. We'll have to see. But Sharon's going to share the screen.
Yes. 1 second. Here we go.
Oh, I'm up. Okay. This is my very favorite quilt, and it's the thing with feathers. And people think this is real small, and it's not. It's 69 by 59. It's a really big quilt. But I like it for a couple of reasons. The simplicity of it, and it literally went together and got quilted in less than a week. It was, yeah, well, I did nothing else but it was fun. So I have a bunch of like in process and detail pictures.
So let me just move you guys out of the way so I can, there we go. They're over.
So, and when I say it was simple, this is just one giant piece of wide back white muslin, and I sprayed it with water first, and then I just got Rit dye and put them in spray bottles because I wanted to just look like a stormy sky, and I just went out in the yard and squirted it, and that's what happened. Where it was wet, it kind of spread, and where it wasn't, it just got speckled. And I just used gray and black. So. And then this is what took the most time, was painting the little sparrow birds. And these are two of the small ones, but the biggest one is, I don't know, maybe like 20 some inches high from top to bottom. So that's just Shiva paint sticks. And then I go back with them, probably at that point, it was the Pigma pens, and did the detailing. So that's just a close-up of the detailing and the shimmer from the Shiva sticks. I really like using those to paint. You get a little detail with them.
So did you use like a brush, right?
Yeah, I use like stencil brushes, and I just dab it and I just smudge it into the fabric, hit it with an iron, and then do another layer to get the deeper color.
So was your fabric, was it white to begin with, or was it a color?
White back. Just the white.
It was all the same fabric?
Except for the hand. The hand is black.
Yeah.
I didn't bother painting all that. And that's my hand. I put my hand out like that, reaching, and then I took a picture from this side, and that's how I did the hand. Just enlarged it and put it on there.
Cool. Huh.
So yeah, see, that's the big bird. You could see, because that's a 26-inch head. They're big. Yeah. And I just invisible applicate them and went to town on the background quilting, which was fun.
Probably for a while.
Yeah. But I'm not kidding. This quilt was like, well, okay, the binding wasn't done in a week because I'm the world's slowest binder. But from the idea to the painting of the birds and the background and quilted was less than a week. And that does not happen often. So the letters are actually, I printed them out on paper real big and then put them on a light box and traced them and then inked them. But that is the favorite pen that they don't make anymore. That Pentel gel roller, best pen ever. So, and then I just did really, really tiny, just straight line quilting around it so the letters popped up.
They show really good.
Yeah.
And some of it's like more bold.
Yeah, certain words are more bold. And that's just another detail pick. I put some quilting on the birds because they were too puffy. And then when we get to the hand, I'll show you, but I wanted just the feathers to be the hope, from the poem. So that's the hand, and there's lots and lots of detail going on in there, which most people can't see in the pictures. but like I said, there's like a little slit wrist, which is awful to think about, but it's how I interpreted the poem. And then from that springs the feather, which the feather then sprawls out the pointer finger, and then that turns into the hope in the background, which is
Nice.
the feather. Yeah. Yep.
Me.
That was my favorite.
That looks like a different quilt.
This is my favorite, and I just had to put this so I would remember the details. Sorry, it was a long time ago. So this one, it's a Dresden plate, and so I was trying to be, it's called a table for four because it has 4 plates. And I made this a really long time ago, 2004. And this is, you can change it. Now I got the info.
Wow.
So for me, this kind of feeds off of my least favorite. And I made this right after I made my least favorite quilt. And so it was kind of like, I'm going to do what I want to do thing. And it was the first time I ever, because you have to applique those Dresden things on there. So that was my first applique.
What's the fabric, Jody? Not to interrupt, but it's like glowing off of that black.
I want to say it's from Carol Breyer Fowler. It's all one piece of fabric. It took me like 8 yards to get those 4. It was all in one fabric, so I'd have to move that little template all around. I still have the remainders of it because
looks like it's glowing. I love it.
I don't know. I don't know. I actually had to go out and buy a new sewing machine, just a cheapie, because mine didn't do the applique thing for the invisible applique.
Little zigzag.
Yeah. And that was the only time I ever used it to make this quilt, and then I got rid of it. But I don't know. I just really love this. I wanted to try doing the not matching thread. Now the thought of that is just, oh my gosh.
Look at how it's glowing. How you
anymore, but I don't know. I love it.
I like how it glows.
Oh, the other part of this is I got a little lazy when it got to the center there. So I didn't want to applique the inside because it was raw. I didn't turn the edges. So I just tried to, I know I'll just couch this shiny stuff on and hide that edge. Then it worked. It's all right. I probably should have had a little more couching somewhere else to make it. I was new. I didn't know.
I need to see where this shiny is. Oh,
the fuzzies.
The fuzzy, yeah.
Oh, and there. I thought you meant around the petals.
No,
Okay.
I did do those for real. I mean, I did the real deal.
I like the texture of that ring.
And the kind of funny thing when I got this out to take the pictures is, when I made this, I didn't use rulers. I despised rulers. So everything I did was like I had to do it some other way, like that thing that looks like a rope around it. That was my solution to not having to stitch with a ruler. So I just do that little thing because I can follow the circle easier. Yeah.
Almost like a little bean stitch just forward, like.
Yeah, it just kind of zigs in and, and then of course the crystals, because I just, learned about those and it was like, oh, so actually the quilting was made with the little circles so that there was a place for the crystals. Again, I could never now. It's so funny how it changes.
I think you should put a little crystal on each one of your labels. So it's not on the quilt.
I don't know. I think, and the other interesting thing to me about looking at older quilts like this is really, I really still do a lot of the same things. They're just not in the same way.
Yeah.
It's really weird. So I don't know. This is absolutely my favorite. It, when I entered it and stuff, it did not well at all. But I didn't even care because it was like, this is what I wanted to make. And I probably spent more time on this quilt than any quilt I've ever made.
Wow.
Doing all that fussy cutting.
You find that though, like the quilts that you love do awful in competition.
You know what? In my experience, for me, the ones that I don't think that much about and just do them and do them quick,
Mhm.
they do the best.
Yeah.
So ones I really think about, it's like you overthink.
Hmm.
The only thing I didn't like about this quilt was this center part because that green is, oh, bad.
But from far away, it
From
glows.
far away, it's okay, but close up, it is, yeah, bad. But, you know, other than that, I really, really, I love this quilt. It was kind of
Love
a
that.
changing point for me, I guess. I don't know.
I love that fabric. I want some of your scraps.
It does, that fabric reminds me of the birds in yours, Karen, with the way you painted them, because there's like a gradation and
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like most of the same colors.
yeah, it almost looks like it is shimmering, right?
Hmm.
Oh, that was your last picture.
I like this one.
So this is my favorite. It's I think it's my favorite because it was the most out of my normal box thing that I've ever done. And the whole process for me was out of my box. So I think that's what was the most favorite about it. It's 36 inches, and this was probably the most challenging thing.
Keeping the cat off it.
Keeping the cat off, but I was trying to work with it. I had to put that in there because I'm sure I'm not the only one that has a pet that thinks that every piece of fabric that's put out is just for them. Yeah. So I had to get the drawing enlarged to a big piece of paper. So I just took that to our like a UPS printer in town, and then transfer paper, and then the drawing in between, and then this kind of clear over top so I could see where my marks were that I had already made.
Yeah.
So I'm using like a, you know, those little manicure tools that you draw things on your fingernails with.
Mhm.
That's what I'm using to draw or trace over top. But
that
the marks have
sterile
really,
transfer?
sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Is that sterile transfer paper?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is exactly what it was, a sterile paper. And this is how faint it was. After all that marking, I marked the whole thing. That's how faint it was. So, and just a little bit of rubbing, like you can see in the scales here where it was starting to get rubbed off already. So I was like, there's no way it's just gonna last. So I went over it again. You can see where I've started on the bottom with an actual leather marking pen that's white that rubs off. And those marks stayed a lot better. So you can see the difference
Oh yeah.
of how well those marks. So that was a big learning process for me. Like that, I think that's, and like I said, that's why it's been my favorite. And then the next thing I learned was I quilted only part of it. So it was like, how do you load an irregular shaped piece of leather? So I loaded kind of like a crummy piece of spare backing that I had. And the first thing that I did was quilt all of the scales. And I didn't quilt around them, like on the outside edge. I just quilted the actual scales themselves. And then I cut, this is just a rough cut of the excess backing off of that. And then I went with a fine pair of, I used the Karen K. Buckley scissors, the ones that people use for doing those collage quilts and cutting out stuff. Because I just find like they're so comfortable and the tip is really nice to get into those little areas. So this icky piece of fabric, because it's going to be hiding, because it was just there to.
It's gonna live inside the quilt.
That's right. Yeah. So I'd never done that before. So that was another new thing. And then figuring it out how to baste and stabilize something for quilting when on leather, every stitch is a permanent hole. So with your cotton, you can pull out your basting stitches, and sometimes you can give a little scratch with your fingernail and the little holes will kind of just soften. But with the leather, I had to make sure I strategically placed any basting in a spot where I knew for sure I was going to stitch. And also because it stretches. So I went through, after I quilted the body of I reloaded it after I trimmed away that excess from the back, and then I only quilted around the outside edge of it so that this would stand right up. and then the tight matchstick quilting around it. But I went in and did like larger chunks of straight lines because that was my basting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just filled in the spaces. So right or wrong is probably a better way to do it, but and that's how flat it gets after you quilt it down. And it's pretty neat to see how leather reacts to the stitching. So you can see the body of the dragon, like you can see that I was really happy with that technique, but the rest of it looked really just kind of flat. So I started adding paint, and I painted some black and some bone white. And this angle I love because it shows how high the the contrast is between the body with the scales. I've only ever done that once, and I think I'll definitely do it again. It was worth it. And then when I finished him, I put a darker red stain all around the outside, and on the body, you can see it's a little bit more orangish. I put a stain that has a bit of an amber hue to it on the inside.
Almost
And
get
that just,
yeah.
sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I said it almost gives it that vignette look, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and then I think I finished it with like a spray varnish just to make because the way that the stains dyed and the acrylic paint with the white and the black dried, some areas looked shiny and some didn't. So I finished it with a varnish to make everything have the same kind of gloss on it. So favorite and most challenging. Oh, I think I have one more picture because this sucked. I faced it. And look how thick that is. It was like lots of glue and clamps. It was super hard to do. It had to dry for a long time.
That's why the leather piece I'm going to start is not going to have an edge. It's just gonna,
Right. Yeah. There's lots of different ways to finish them, but I just felt like that one needed to have like no edge. So yeah, so that's mine.
well, very nice. So I guess we're going to take a little break, just a short one. And when we come back, we'll talk about our least favorite. And not necessarily that they're not our favorite. It's just, I know at least with mine, it's a particular challenge, which made it my least favorite. So, all right, we'll see you back in a minute. Welcome back from that little break, and here we go with our least favorite. Oh, I'm first again. All right, this is one of my least favorite quilts, and it's not because I didn't like the design. It's because of the extreme challenge, I guess is the best way to put it, that I went through to arrive at this quilt. So. If you follow my blogs, you've probably already seen it because I documented everything with this. So we'll get started and then we'll talk about it. So that was the original quilt, and I didn't want a lot of piecing or applique because I really wanted the quilting to be the star of this quilt. There's not much on it, and I added those outer diamonds. And I'm not a marker, but because this quilt was it's like a black batik, so it's black and blue and black. You know, it's like you couldn't see anything. So this is the only quilt that I marked everything. I marked every feather because I wanted them all to be exact. I marked every line. And I used a new to me pen, which was a water soluble white marker. And you can go ahead, Sharon. But you see, I marked everything. This is so nice. I think this is why I don't mark now because of what happened on this quilt. So, or I'll only use chalk. There it is. That everything is marked because I wanted it to be like perfect mirror images. I didn't want my usual, if it doesn't match, it's okay. So there it is. It's all marked. And that's actually, you can see there's two different die lots of this batik in here. So I tried to balance it. The center and the outside are one, and then the middle is the other one. So
Yeah.
think about that when you're buying your fabric. Even though it's the same Hoffman batik, there's two different die lots there.
It's really noticeable once you mention it.
Yeah. So this is full trapunto too. I put it up there, stitched all around those chalk lines, and then the next picture is the cutaway. So I cut it all away. Everything is this quilt took way too long. Go ahead, Sharon. So this is, you can see, now I'm quilting with my real black thread. And as I'm quilting, I'm spritzing with the water, just like my test sample had done. And it's taken the lines away. And life's wonderful, so I think. And this is when it was bleeding. It's all quilted and it's being blocked. And at that point, my computer was over here at the bottom left. And I was on the phone with my mom and I said, oh, I'll show you. And I turned around and I snapped a picture. Go to the next picture, Sharon. That's the picture I took. That is that same quilt with a flash. Every line is still there.
With the flash.
With the flash. There's some sort of mica in that pen that I used that does not go away. And it was, I got it from Blue Line Eraser. And I was on the phone with them the next day and they sent me all these different concoctions of what to try to get it off. And nothing worked. Nothing. So if you go to the next picture, on the left is no flash, on the right is flash. And I have a bunch of these.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
Oh, that must have made you so mad.
Well, yeah. And this happening right here is less than 2 weeks from where this quilt is supposed to be somewhere.
Wow.
Yeah. So keep going because it's unbelievable without a flash and with a flash. It's just, oh, it still makes me disgusted. Thought I was over it, but I'm not.
And you would have sent these pictures to them.
Well, no, I would have sent it on the left because I don't ever really use a flash. It's because I was on the phone with my mom, so I turned around and I just took the picture. The phone automatically put the flash. If it were not for that picture, I would not have known.
Right, but these are the pictures you would have sent to the people who made the pen.
Yeah, these are all what I sent to them.
Yeah. Wow.
So between that picture and this picture, because the crystals are going on it now, I spent an entire 2 weeks. This quilt was still on that big board in my family room. And I spent an entire 2 weeks bent over that quilt with 3 black Shiva paint sticks and a brush. And I painted the entire quilt. Just on the quilting lines. So if you can zoom in on the where it's got more blue on the outside, you can probably see that every line of those feathers is darker because there's black paint on all of them.
That probably helped to add to the dimension, though.
I think so. I mean, but it is already trapunto, so it's got trapunto and now it has shading.
With that outer fabric being a smidge lighter,
Mm-hmm.
it really darkens the stitching line.
So the quilt was quilted, like I laughed because I quilted it all with the trapunto, then I quilted it all for real, and then I painted every quilting line on there. And it's funny because even though I painted it, there are some spots on it that still, with a flash, you can still see the white lines. Yeah, I like the quilt, but I hate what happened to the quilt.
Yeah.
So that's why it was called True Colors. But now it's called True Colors, also known as White Lines.
Did it make it to its destination in that 2 week?
It did.
It did.
I also threw out my back from being bent over the quilt for so long. When I finally like stood up, I couldn't stand up straight.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It's won awards, but I think people now just wait to see it so they can take a picture of it with flash to see what. Oh, I forgot. There's more detail. A couple more. That's after it was all crystal, and they're actually black crystals, but these pictures they shine as clear, and I don't know why. They're black, little tiny ones. Oh, next.
Oh, so this is my least favorite. Not because it was challenging, I just don't like it. I mean, it's nice and all, but so a little bit of backstory. So I had made my first whole cloth quilt.
Mhm.
It was gray, whatever. I dyed the fabric. I used contrasting thread, and I entered it into a show, and I got my critique sheet back. And real big on the top, it said, whole cloths generally should be made with white or off-white fabric. And I was just like, what? You know, and I hadn't entered that many shows. So I don't know. I'm like, oh, I suck. I didn't even know that. Okay, fine. I can do that. So I was mad. Like, I'll show you. I can do cream if you want cream. And so I did. And yeah, it turned out great. I mean, I spent a lot of time, but it was just the whole time I was angry because you are making me conform and do something I don't want to do. So it was never really great. You know, I made it and yeah, okay, I like it. But it's like a sore spot to
You made
me.
it out of spite.
Karen, zoom in on that corner for me.
Which corner?
That might be a picture. There's
Is there
close.
a more detailed picture? Now go up to the corner because it almost looks heartish, and Jody never puts hearts.
Not really,
Oh,
not really a heart.
almost.
No, it's like a soft triangle, but
You're just missing a dip in the, yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess too, the other part of this was that, you know, I didn't know how to do a whole cloth really, because this isn't how I did the gray one. And then it was just, you know, not my.
I
thing.
love the all over peacock feathers. I love that.
I did too until I started doing them.
Halfway through you're
It
done.
was good for about one pass, and that took more time than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It took days and days because
I
that's
love how it
big.
looks.
I want to say it's like 80 by 80.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's monotonous.
Yeah.
But it's nice
Looks good.
texture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hardest stuff is always the most worthwhile, though.
Sure.
I'll believe you on that, Sharon, but not
Maybe.
Yeah. So I just, I like it, but yeah, not really my
I
favorite.
like it.
And I did mark this with water soluble pen that, yeah, it wasn't the easiest to get out either. And I don't know, I mean, that was a long time ago. And there really wasn't, you know, there were a few to use, not like now where you can get so many different kinds. Oh, I probably just bought it at Joann's. Is that the last picture? I think.
I'd have to go ahead in order to see that. Let's see. Yeah, it's your last picture.
So on that corner, that was the other thing. I'm like, well, you know, had been, you know, looking at magazines and these whole cloths, a lot of them do some fancy thing. And I'm like, ooh, I should cut it round. Well, I had no experience. I mean, I don't know. I'm like, how do you do that? So I used a dinner plate and just raised it and cut it. But then someone said, well, you have to use bias binding. I'm like, what? I am not. I don't even know how to do that. What's not going to work? I'm like, it'll work. And yeah, it didn't really work. So when I blocked it, I just put that same dinner plate, one on each corner,
Mhm.
to hold it there with books on top of it, so it would lay flat until it dried, and it did work. It stayed there.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was. So that's why I said, because the next quilt I made was that favorite one. So it truly was like this. Yeah,
You got
this.
all your angst out on this one.
Yeah, I am done with this thing. We're moving on.
So I have a question. In this, maybe that's zooming in a little too much. Okay, the background texture fill with the peacock feathers. Did you mark every feather out? Because I know you marked a lot, right?
I just marked a random, almost like broken glass. You know what I mean?
Okay,
And then
okay,
filled each spot with it.
okay.
No, I didn't mark all that.
Well, no, I knew that you didn't write like all the little lines, but like you kind of outlined each one though, right? You kind of had a,
Yeah, I just had some random shape marked that it filled.
that's a neat way to do it, like a broken glass technique.
Yeah,
So,
it works with anything.
oh yeah.
I mean, you can do feathers that way.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. So is it a light gray or is it white?
It's cream,
Cream.
cream.
Pearls of wisdom.
Girls of wisdom.
Okay. So this is kind of like not like it's not a show quilt, it's not a fancy little quilt at all. It's there's a little wall hanging that my mom made that she wanted to gift to someone, and she was going to quilt it. And originally she had this, see where it's all kind of like cut on the angle around the edges. It was all 1-inch squares of light fabric all the way around the outside, but she didn't like it. So she cut it around outside the heart and then appliqued it down to a background piece of fabric and sent it to me to quilt. But this is the applique. I love you, Mom. But we can't quilt that. So I had to figure out how to tidy it up and fix it. So I opened up where she had cut. And so on the left-hand side, you can see this is where she had cut and then had tried to do a needle turn. And on the right-hand side here, I took my ruler and trimmed it to about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch, maybe about 3/8 of an inch or so, just to tidy up the line a little bit. And then I put it back down onto her background fabric and basted it in place. So my idea for the outside edge, because like if you look down here, you can see where it's kind of, the piecing is pretty uneven, so it's not a perfectly straight line around the outside. So I decided to do a really tiny kind of micro stipple stitch, like a scribble stitch around the outside edge to make the outside edge look like almost lacy.
Mm-hmm.
So it would just kind of disappear like a little piece of lace into the background fabric instead of trying to figure out how do we turn all of this bulk back down. So I went around and did that. And yeah, I pulled my basting stitches out and I was like, oh, cool. It actually does kind of look like a little bit of lace around the outside edge. And then I had to do something with the center. I didn't know how to quilt the center. And this was just probably the worst spot of piecing that was off. So I couldn't quilt anything on the inside that was dependent on the squares or piecing being accurate. So I just did a really shallow wave across all of the seams. So this is all one direction. And then I did the opposite direction. And what this kind of quilting did for the off piecing was it completely pulled your eye away from the points and the intersections being off, because it also almost made it look kind of woven or curved pieced. But the trick with doing something like that is to make sure that those waves aren't too deep. They have to be really, really shallow right beside the seam line. So it totally disguised the wonky piecing. Yeah, you can see how just it's very, very, and those are 1-inch squares. So the piecing is really, or the weave is really shallow. And voila, put some background quilting around it and blended it into that kind of lacy outside edge. So I don't know that this was my least favorite, but it was probably the most challenging. Like my leather one was more challenging because it was a fun project. I was learning all these new things. This was one where it was more challenging because it was like, oh, how do I fix the boo-boos? Right?
So we associate our least favorite with how much angst it brings us.
Yeah, and I felt good about it once it was finished, but some of the stuff really kind of, and this was the simplest fix. It was like a little scribble stitch and a wavy line, and something really simple. So, and the recipient is super happy with it, and it's exactly what she wanted. So that's the main thing. So, yeah. But I think all of these kinds of struggles, like there are days that I'm frustrated about some things that I have to try to figure out, but they just make you a better quilter, right?
Yes. Yes, most definitely.
They add more knowledge and more skill.
You know how to fix more things, and you know that you shouldn't do some things.
Yeah. So that's a close-up of that edge where it really just kind of disappears into the background. So, and that's the last picture.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Little reliving some of that, but yeah, that was fun.
Traumatic.
Oh, so I know this was like a little short episode, but if you guys want to share pictures of your favorite quilts or your least favorite quilts, we would love to see them. And I think maybe in the future we might do that. If we have enough pictures from people, we might do a little montage episode of here's yeah. So I think that would be really cool. Yeah. So all right, we will see you again next time. Thanks for being here. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.